September 18, 1990. The desert heat had already begun its merciless climb when Marta Delgado approached room 306 of the Desert Pines Motor Inn. The morning light cast long shadows across the faded stucco exterior of the two-story motel that had seen better days. Marta had worked at Desert Pines for nearly 15 years, long enough to develop a sixth sense about the rooms and their occupants. Room 306 had been quiet. Too quiet. She knocked twice, her knuckles rapping against the peeling paint of the door. "Housekeeping," she called out, voice echoing across the empty second-floor walkway. No response. Marta retrieved her master key, inserted it into the lock, and pushed the door open. The cool air from the rattling air conditioner brushed against her face as she stepped inside, the dim interior a stark contrast to the bright New Mexico morning. "Señor," she called softly. The television flickered with the morning news, volume turned low. The bed was still made, barely disturbed. And there, propped against the headboard as if merely resting, sat a middle-aged man in pressed slacks and a white dress shirt. His eyes stared vacantly at the ceiling, a dark stain of dried blood trailing from his right temple down the side of his face. Marta dropped her cleaning supplies and backed away, the scream caught in her throat. By 8:45 a.m., the parking lot of the Desert Pines Motor Inn was crowded with police cruisers. Detective Ray Calloway ducked under the yellow crime scene tape stretched across the doorway of room 306, his weathered face betraying nothing as he surveyed the scene. At 53, Calloway had spent the last 20 years with the Santa Mora Police Department. In a town of just under 15,000, homicides were rare enough that each one left an impression. "What have we got, Martinez?" Calloway asked his partner, a 30-something detective who had moved from Albuquerque 3 years earlier, seeking the quieter pace of small-town police work. Detective Sofia Martinez glanced up from her notepad. Male, approximately mid-40s. No ID on him. Single gunshot wound to the left temple. The motel manager says he checked in 5 days ago under the name George Davies, paid cash for the week. Housekeeper found him this morning. Calloway approached the body, careful not to disturb anything. The man was well-built but not muscular, with neatly trimmed salt and pepper hair and manicured fingernails. His clothes were expensive but not flashy, the kind of attire that suggested money without drawing attention. "No wallet?" Calloway asked, noticing the man's empty pockets pulled inside out. "Nothing," Martinez confirmed. "No wallet, no keys, no ID. Just the clothes on his back." The county medical examiner, Dr. Helen Wright, looked up from where she was examining the body. "Rigor suggests he's been dead between 10 and 14 hours. I'll know more once I get him back to the lab." Calloway nodded, then turned his attention to the rest of the room. Everything was meticulously ordered. The bed had been slept in but remade with military precision. On the nightstand, a lamp, a notepad with nothing written on it, and a television remote. The closet contained a single navy blue suit on a hanger and a pair of polished Oxford shoes beneath it. It was the desk that drew Calloway's attention. A cup of coffee, stone cold. A Gideon Bible, open to Psalm 39. And a gas station receipt from Cimarron, New Mexico, nearly 150 miles north, dated 2 days prior. "Looks like suicide at first glance," Martinez said, pointing to the .38 revolver that lay on the bed beside the man's right hand. "Found the weapon right there. No signs of forced entry. Door was locked from the inside, housekeeper had to use her key." Calloway's eyes narrowed as he leaned in to examine the gunshot wound. "Something doesn't add up. Look at the angle of entry." Dr. Wright nodded. "I noticed that too. The trajectory is unusual for a self-inflicted wound. And there's powder residue, but not the kind of close-contact burn you'd typically see in a suicide." Calloway pulled out his reading glasses to inspect the man's right hand. No gunshot residue on his fingers either. "We'll need to test both hands, but this doesn't look right. And who empties their own pockets before shooting themselves?" Martinez added. By noon, the initial theory of suicide had all but evaporated. The motel manager, Vernon Tate, a balding man with permanent sweat stains under his armpits, stood nervously in the office as Calloway and Martinez questioned him. He checked in on the 13th, Tate explained, flipping through a worn registration book. Paid cash for a week. Quiet fellow, kept to himself. Didn't request any services, didn't make any calls from the room. Did he have any visitors that you noticed? Martinez asked. Tate shook his head. Not that I saw, but I'm not always at the desk. Betty works the afternoon shift, and Miguel handles nights. We'll need to speak with both of them, Calloway said. Any security cameras? A humorless laugh escaped Tate's lips. In this place? Lucky if the ice machine works half the time. Back at the station, Calloway pinned what little information they had to the bulletin board. The name, George Davies, in quotation marks. The gas station receipt. A preliminary crime scene photo. The Bible reference. Psalm 39, Martinez read aloud from her Bible app. I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue, I will keep my mouth with a bridle, while the wicked is before me. What do you make of that? Calloway rubbed his chin. Could be nothing. Could be everything. Let's run the fingerprints and see if our John Doe has a record. By evening, the autopsy results confirmed what they had suspected, murder disguised as suicide. The bullet had entered from the left temple, but based on calluses, muscle development, and the placement of his wristwatch, the victim was right-handed. More damning was the trajectory of the bullet, which suggested it was fired from at least 2 feet away. So someone holds a gun to his head, fires, then places the weapon by his right hand and locks the door from the inside on their way out. Martinez frowned, the impossibility of it settling in. Maybe he wasn't alone, Calloway suggested. Maybe someone was in the room with him, someone he let in willingly. The fingerprint search came back empty. Whoever George Davies was, he wasn't in any database they had access to. The next morning, Calloway and Martinez began canvassing businesses within walking distance of the motel. At Frank's Diner, a 24-hour establishment 2 blocks away, they struck what felt like their first real lead. Yeah, I remember him, said Donna Reeves, a waitress in her 50s with bleached blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Came in a few times last week. Always sat in that booth by the window. She pointed to a corner table with a clear view of both the entrance and the street. Read the classifieds, drank black coffee, ordered the same thing each time, scrambled eggs and toast. Did he talk to anyone? Martinez asked. Not really. Polite enough when I took his order. Said he was just passing through when I asked if he was new in town. Paid cash, left decent tips. Notice anything unusual about him? Calloway pressed. Donna hesitated. Well, there was one thing. Whenever the door opened, he'd glance up, real quick-like. Not the casual look most folks give. It was more, alert. Like he was expecting someone, or worried about who might walk in. As they left the diner, Martinez voiced what they were both thinking. He was watching his back. Question is, who was he watching for? Calloway replied. Word traveled fast in Santa Mora. By the end of the week, the mysterious death at the Desert Pines had spawned a dozen different rumors. Calloway heard them all as he made his rounds. The man was a federal agent deep undercover, he was on the run from a Mexican cartel, he was a witness in a mafia trial who'd slipped his protection detail. One particularly persistent rumor came from Edith Grayson, an elderly librarian who swore she recognized the composite sketch released to the public. I've seen that face before, she insisted when Calloway interviewed her in the quiet reference section of the town library. Back in 76 or 77, we had these missing persons flyers come through. Young man, around 30, disappeared from Colorado. The resemblance is striking. But without a name or the original flyer, the lead seemed destined to join the others in the growing file of dead ends. 2 weeks into the investigation, Calloway sat at his desk long after most of the department had gone home, nursing a cooling cup of coffee and staring at the board of scattered clues. Still here. Captain Russell Sanders leaned against the doorframe, his imposing frame filling the space. Something about this case, Cap. It doesn't add up. Sanders entered and took a seat across from Calloway. You've been a detective long enough to know some cases don't get solved, Ray. Not right away, at least. The locked room is what gets me, Calloway said. How does a killer shoot a man from 2 feet away, then exit a room leaving it locked from the inside? It's not some Agatha Christie novel. Could be a master key, Sanders suggested. Hotel staff, former employee. We checked. Keys are accounted for, and nobody on staff matches the profile of someone capable of this. Sanders leaned forward. What about the room itself? Any other ways in or out? Standard motel room. Door to the walkway, bathroom window too small for an adult to squeeze through. Maybe we're overthinking it, Sanders said. Guy has enemies, they catch up to him, force him to let them in at gunpoint. After they kill him, they simply walk out and pull the door shut behind them. It locks automatically. Doesn't explain how it was engaged from the inside, Calloway countered. The deadbolt and security chain were both engaged when the housekeeper found him. As the months passed, the case of the nameless man in room 306 gradually slipped from active investigation to cold case. Calloway never fully let it go, though. He'd pull out the file on quiet nights, reviewing the details, hoping something new would jump out at him. In 1993, a break seemed imminent when a man arrested for armed robbery in Phoenix claimed to recognize the victim's photo. That's Eddie Mercer, he said confidently. Used to run numbers for the Donatelli family out of Chicago in the early 80s. Word was he skimmed from the books and had to disappear. But when Chicago PD sent over Mercer's file, including fingerprints and dental records, it proved to be another dead end. Whoever the Desert Pines victim was, he wasn't Eddie Mercer. The years rolled on. Calloway made detective sergeant, then lieutenant. Martinez transferred to the state police, seeking more challenging cases. The Desert Pines Motor Inn changed ownership twice, eventually rebranding as the Southwestern Lodge in 1998. In 2003, advancements in digital facial reconstruction offered a new avenue. The county brought in a specialist who created an age regression composite of what the victim might have looked like in his 30s. The image was distributed nationally, resulting in dozens of calls and emails. Calloway, now nearing retirement, personally followed up on each one, but none provided a confirmed identity. After 30 years with the department, Calloway finally turned in his badge in 2010. At his retirement party, Captain Sanders, now Chief Sanders, presented him with a shadow box containing his service weapon, badge, and commendations. Any regrets? Sanders asked as they shared a drink after the ceremony. Calloway swirled the whiskey in his glass. Just one. Room 306. Sanders nodded, understanding immediately. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, Ray. This one is, Calloway insisted. The answer is out there. I just didn't find it in time. On a crisp autumn day in 2020, nearly 30 years after the mysterious death, Betty Tate was cleaning out her late husband Vernon's storage unit. Among boxes of financial records and forgotten motel supplies, she discovered a small cardboard box labeled 306, Do Not Open. Curiosity got the better of her. Inside, she found a collection of items Vernon had apparently removed from the motel, old guest logs, a faded Polaroid of the motel from the 1970s, and a sealed envelope. When she opened it, a small brass key tumbled out, along with a note in Vernon's handwriting, found taped under nightstand drawer in 306 after police investigation. Never told anyone. Betty called the police department. Detective Carlos Ramirez, who had inherited many of Calloway's cold cases, arranged to meet her the following day. Vernon never mentioned this. Ramirez asked as he examined the key. Betty shook her head. He was strange about that whole incident. Refused to rent out room 306 again. Said it was bad for business to have people staying in a murder room. Eventually, we converted it to storage. The key had a small tag attached with faded numbers, July 24, 83. After some research, Ramirez identified it as belonging to a bus station locker in Albuquerque. Bus stations had phased out such lockers decades ago due to security concerns, but records indicated that a small storage facility had taken over the old station in the early 2000s, maintaining the original lockers for nostalgic appeal. Ramirez contacted Ray Calloway, now 73 and living in a small house on the outskirts of Santa Mora. Despite his arthritis and the oxygen tank he occasionally needed, Calloway insisted on accompanying Ramirez to Albuquerque. "This case has haunted me for 30 years, he said as they drove down the interstate. "I need to see it through." The storage facility manager was initially reluctant to open the ancient locker without proper documentation, but the combined persuasion of a police badge and a search warrant eventually won him over. Locker July 24, 83 contained a weathered leather briefcase, locked with a simple combination mechanism. After obtaining permission, Ramirez carefully pried it open. Inside lay 3 items: a black and white photograph of 2 young boys standing on a dock beside a rustic cabin, a small leather-bound journal with most pages torn out, and a sealed manila envelope labeled in precise handwriting, "In case they find me." Calloway's hands trembled slightly as Ramirez carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "My name is not important. What matters is what I saw on June 12, 1974, at the Lakeside Inn in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Room 217. I was never supposed to be there. I was never supposed to see them. I was never supposed to take the photographs. For 16 years, I've been running. If you're reading this, they finally caught up with me. The negatives are not here. I've made arrangements. The truth will outlive me." The note was unsigned. What truth? Ramirez wondered aloud. What photographs? Calloway stared at the black and white photo of the 2 boys. Whoever he was running from something big. Something worth killing for, even decades later. In the months that followed, the investigation took on new life. The photo of the boys was digitally enhanced and circulated nationally. The cabin in the background was identified as part of a collection of vacation rentals near Coeur d'Alene that had been demolished in the late 1970s to make way for a resort development. Records from the Lakeside Inn confirmed that on June 12, 1974, room 217 had been rented to a Richard Whitman, another alias, they presumed. More significantly, newspaper archives revealed that on June 13, 1974, a prominent business executive and rumored mob associate had been found dead in his car just outside Coeur d'Alene, an apparent suicide that some local journalists had questioned at the time. So our John Doe witnesses something in that hotel room, Ramirez theorized as he and Calloway reviewed the timeline they'd constructed. Something involving organized crime, possibly a murder disguised as suicide, similar to how his own death was staged. He photographs it, Calloway continued, then runs, changes his identity, keeps moving for 16 years until they catch up with him in Santa Mora. But who are they? And where are these negatives he mentioned? That question remained unanswered. The journal found in the briefcase contained only 3 intact pages with cryptic notations that appeared to be locations and dates, potential safe houses or meeting points, perhaps. Several names were mentioned, but checks against FBI databases of known organized crime figures returned no matches. In December 2020, Ramirez received an unexpected call from a retirement home in Seattle. A resident had seen the circulated photo of the 2 boys and had come forward with information. "The boy on the left is my brother, Daniel," explained Harold McKenzie, a frail man of 84. "The other boy was our neighbor, Thomas Reeves. That photo was taken at our family cabin in the summer of '67 or '68. And Thomas Reeves," Ramirez asked carefully, what happened to him? Harold's eyes clouded with memory. Tommy was smart. Went to college on scholarship, studied journalism. Had big dreams of exposing corruption, taking down powerful people. Then one day in '74, he just disappeared. His apartment was cleared out, bills left unpaid. His parents got a postcard a week later saying he needed to go away for a while. They never saw him again. When shown the age-progressed composite of the Desert Pines victim, Harold studied it for a long moment before nodding slowly. Could be Tommy. The eyes are right. It's been so many years, but, yes, I think that could be him. DNA testing against samples from Thomas Reeves' surviving relatives confirmed it months later. The nameless man was indeed Thomas Reeves, a promising young journalist who had vanished in 1974 after apparently witnessing something he was never meant to see. But the story didn't end there. In April 2021, an anonymous package arrived at the Santa Mora Police Department addressed to investigating officers, case #90-137, Desert Pines. Inside was a weathered film canister containing negatives and a brief note: "He told me to wait 30 years. I waited 31, just to be safe." The negatives, when developed, revealed 5 photographs taken through a hotel room window. They showed 3 men in suits standing over a 4th man seated in a chair. The final photograph captured the seated man with what appeared to be a gun held to his head. 2 of the standing men were eventually identified as organized crime figures who had died in the late 1990s. The 3rd remained unidentified. The seated man was confirmed to be the business executive found dead near Coeur d'Alene in 1974. So Reeves witnesses a murder, photographs it, then spends the next 16 years on the run, Calloway summarized, looking at the evidence board that now contained far more information than it had 3 decades earlier. He creates a new identity, moves from place to place, always looking over his shoulder. Until Santa Mora, Ramirez added. Where they found him, recreated his original crime scene as some kind of message, and vanished again. But who sent the negatives after all these years? And why wait so long? The Desert Pines case file remains open. The investigation continues to uncover fragments of Thomas Reeves' life in hiding, aliases he used, places he stayed, jobs he worked briefly before moving on. But the full truth of what happened in room 217 of the Lakeside Inn, who was responsible, and who ultimately tracked Reeves to Santa Mora remains elusive. Room 306 of what was once the Desert Pines Motor Inn remains vacant to this day. The current owners have renovated the entire property except for that one room, which serves as something of a storage closet. Staff claim to hear occasional noises from within, a television turning on by itself, the sound of footsteps when no one is there, the phantom smell of gunpowder that appears and vanishes. In his retirement home, Ray Calloway keeps a copy of the case file in his nightstand drawer. Some nights, when sleep eludes him, he reviews the facts once more, still searching for the elusive connections that might finally bring closure to the mystery that defined much of his career. And somewhere, perhaps, the person who mailed those negatives holds other secrets, pieces of a puzzle still waiting to be assembled, 30 years after a nameless man died in a locked room, leaving behind only questions that echo through the decades like footsteps in an empty motel corridor.